The night was quiet, the street almost empty, and the air carried the faint smell of rain. John walked slowly, holding a plastic bag filled with leftover food. Every evening he came out of his small house to feed the stray dogs that lived near the alley. He was not rich, he was not famous, he was just an ordinary young man who had a kind heart. And every night the dogs waited for him, tails wagging, eyes bright with hope. But this night felt different. The streetlight flickered above his head, throwing shadows that moved strangely across the walls. The air was colder than usual, and John felt a shiver crawl down his back. Still, he kept walking, telling himself it was nothing. When he reached the corner, he placed the bag of food on the ground and whistled softly. Usually the dogs came running at once, barking and jumping with excitement. But tonight no sound came, no footsteps, no wagging tails, only silence. A silence that felt heavy, like someone was watching him. John frowned and looked around. The street was empty. The houses dark, the windows closed. Strange, he whispered to himself. He bent down, opened the bag, and placed pieces of food on the ground. But his hands trembled slightly, because the silence was too deep. Too wrong. He turned his head left, then right, and that was when he felt it, eyes he did not see them yet. But he felt them. Something or someone was watching from the shadows. His heart beat faster, he slowly stood up, his legs stiff. Then he heard it, a faint sound, like a small breath, like a whisper carried by the wind. It was not the growl of a dog, it was softer, weaker, almost broken. He took one step back, ready to run. But then he saw movement near the dark end of the alley. Two small shapes, thin and trembling, stepping into the weak light of the street lamp. John froze. They were not dogs, they were not even human in the normal sense. Two girls stood there, no older than 12 or 13. But their skin was pale, almost glowing faintly under the light. Their eyes were huge, shining like stars. Too bright, too strange. Their hair was messy, their clothes torn and dirty, and their faces showed only fear and hunger. John's mouth went dry. He wanted to speak, but no words came. The girls stared at him with wide eyes, their bodies shaking as if they had not eaten for days. Then in a voice so weak it was almost broken, one of them whispered, "Help, please." The sound struck his heart. It was not the sound of a wild creature. It was not a trick, it was a cry for life. John stepped forward slowly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly, though his own voice shook. "I won't hurt you." The girls took a step back, fear still in their eyes, but the younger one clutched her stomach, bending forward as hunger twisted inside her. John looked at the food on the ground. Pieces of bread, rice, and meat meant for dogs. He picked one piece and held it out toward them. "Here, eat," he said gently. For a moment they hesitated, staring at the food like it was something dangerous. Then slowly, carefully, the older girl took the piece from his hand. She smelled it, then tried to bite, but the moment the food touched her tongue, she gagged and almost choked. Her sister grabbed her arm, helping her breathe. The food fell to the ground. Untouched, John stared in shock. Why couldn't they eat? What were they? The girl's skin glowed faintly again, and for the first time John realized something impossible. They were not normal children. They were not from this world. He felt his knees weaken, his mind racing with fear and confusion. But the two girls looked at him with tears in their shining eyes. The younger one whispered again, her voice trembling, "Hungry. Please." John's heart squeezed with pain. He could not understand how. He could not understand why, but he knew one thing. These were not monsters, they were children, starving, alone, afraid. And now, standing in front of him, they were asking for his help. Behind him, the night grew colder. The street light flickered again as if warning him that danger was near. John turned his head and thought he saw a movement far away. Shadows, shapes, maybe people, maybe not. But his instinct told him something was coming. Something that was searching, and it was not the stray dogs. He looked back at the alien girls. They stared at him with desperate eyes. And in that moment John made a choice. He whispered softly, "Come with me." He bent down, picked up the bag of food and motioned for them to follow. The girls hesitated but then stepped closer, their small feet silent on the cold ground. John led them toward his house, every step heavy with fear and doubt. The night around him felt alive, full of hidden eyes, full of danger, but he could not leave them behind. He could not walk away. When he reached his door, he quickly unlocked it, pushed it open, and waved them inside. The two alien girls slipped into his small home. Moving like shadows, John followed, shutting the door fast. His heart thundered in his chest. The night of stray dogs had turned into something else. Something far bigger. Something that would change his life forever. The door closed behind John with a quiet click. For a moment he stood still, breathing hard, his ears sharp for any sound outside. The house felt different now, as if the air itself had grown heavy. Two strange girls stood in his living room, staring at him with glowing eyes, silent and afraid. The small lamp on the table flickered, throwing soft light across their faces. Now John could see them clearly. Their skin was pale but not sickly. It carried a faint shimmer like moonlight trapped under the surface. Their hair was tangled, dirty, but strands seemed to shine as if touched by silver, and their eyes, wide and endless, seemed older than children should ever look. John's hands shook as he placed the bag of food on the table. "Sit," he whispered, his voice low. The girls hesitated, then slowly lowered themselves onto the old couch. Their bodies tense, they sat close together, holding each other's hands tightly, as if afraid someone might tear them apart. John opened the bag, pulling out the bread and meat again. He broke a piece and offered it carefully. The older girl took it, her fingers trembling. She placed the bread against her lips, tried to chew, but again her throat rejected it. She coughed, gagging, her sister patting her back. The food fell from her hand, landing softly on the carpet. John frowned, confused and worried. "They can't eat," he whispered to himself. But then he noticed something strange. When the younger girl cried quietly, her tears glowed faint blue, shining in the dim light. The glow faded as the tears fell onto the floor, leaving small spots that vanished in seconds. John's heart pounded harder. He had no answers. Only questions. Who were they? Where had they come from, and why were they here? Starving, hiding in his town? The older girl raised her head, her voice shaking but stronger than before. "No food," she whispered, "not for us." Her words were broken. Her accent strange, but John understood enough. "They could not eat human food. What do you need?" John asked softly. The girl only shook her head, her lips trembling as if she wanted to explain but could not. The younger one leaned against her sister, her body weak, her eyes slowly closing. John felt a wave of helplessness wash over him. He walked to the kitchen, filled a glass of water and brought it back. The girls looked at it with suspicion. The older one took a small sip, then nodded slightly, relief in her glowing eyes. At least water worked. They drank slowly, carefully, as if every drop mattered. The silence in the room stretched long. Broken only by their breathing, John sat across from them, trying to think. He wanted to ask questions, but he was afraid to push too hard. He sensed that trust was fragile, like thin glass that could shatter with one wrong word. Finally, he asked gently, "Where are you from?" The girls looked at each other, fear flashing across their faces. Then the older one whispered a single word, "Far." Her eyes dropped to the floor, and John knew she would say no more before he could speak again. A sound outside made his blood freeze. Engines, low and rumbling, stopping on the street. Headlights spilled across the curtains. Bright and harsh, John jumped to his feet, rushing to the window. Pulling the curtain aside just enough to see, a black vehicle had stopped outside. 3 men stepped out, dressed in dark uniforms, carrying strange devices that glowed faintly. Their movements were sharp, professional, like hunters closing in on prey. One of them pointed a scanner toward the houses, its red light sweeping across the street. John's chest tightened, his breath catching in his throat. "They're here," the older girl whispered, her voice breaking, her glowing eyes filled with terror. The younger one clung to her arm, trembling violently. John turned to them, panic and determination clashing inside him. "Hide," he said quickly, pointing toward the basement door. The girls jumped to their feet and ran quietly, their bare feet almost soundless on the floor. John opened the basement door, guiding them down the narrow steps. He closed it gently behind them, locking it just as a heavy knock struck the front door. Bang, bang, bang! The sound echoed through the house, making John flinch. His heart raced like a trapped bird. "Open up," a voice called, firm and cold. John wiped the sweat from his forehead. Trying to steady his breathing, he moved toward the door slowly, every step echoing in his ears. Another knock shook the wood, louder this time. John placed his hand on the doorknob but did not open it. "What do you want?" he asked, forcing his voice to sound calm. There was a pause, then the man outside spoke again. "We're looking for runaways," the voice said, deep and sharp. "2 girls dangerous, you might have seen them." John's stomach twisted. Dangerous, they called them. But John had seen their fear, their weakness, their hunger. There was nothing dangerous about those children, only suffering. He clenched his jaw, anger mixing with fear. I haven't seen anyone, John replied firmly. Silence, then slow footsteps moved across his porch. One of the men was circling the house. His shadow passing by the window, John held his breath, praying they would leave, but deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The girls were not safe, and neither was he. The knock at the door grew louder, echoing like thunder in John's chest. The voice outside called again, cold and commanding. Open up now. This is official business. John swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his temple behind the locked basement door. The two alien girls sat in darkness, holding each other, praying they would not be found. John gripped the doorknob, but his hand shook. If he opened, the men would search and the girls would be taken. If he refused, suspicion would grow and they might force their way inside. He had no time to think. The knock turned into pounding fists, shaking the wooden frame. Finally, John pulled the door slightly open, enough to show his face but not the house behind him. 3 men in black uniforms stood on his porch, their boots wet from the street. Their eyes were hidden behind dark glasses even in the night. Each of them carried a strange device, half weapon, half scanner, glowing faintly with red light. The tallest one leaned forward, speaking in a voice that cut through the air. We're looking for 2 subjects, he said. Runaway's dangerous. Have you seen anything unusual? John forced himself to look calm, even though his heart hammered like a drum. No, he said, shaking his head slowly. Just me here. The man studied him in silence, his face hard and unreadable. Then he lifted the glowing device, pointing it past John into the house. A red beam swept across the living room. Buzzing softly, John's pulse raced, afraid the scanner would detect something hidden below. One of the other men walked around the porch, his boots heavy on the wood. The crunch of gravel followed as another circled the side of the house. John knew they were searching every corner. Every shadow. He kept his body in the doorway, trying to block their view. You live alone? The tall man asked suddenly. Yes, John answered quickly. Only me. No visitors. The man's lips curled into the faintest smile, but it was not friendly. You don't mind if we look around then, do you? He said. John's throat tightened. For a second he could not speak. If they entered, the girls were finished. He had to act, to stall, to distract, anything. My house is private property, John said firmly, trying to sound confident. Unless you have a warrant. You can't come in. The words hung in the cold night air. The man tilted his head, his smile fading, replaced by a hard expression. You think the law protects you? He said slowly. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Before John could reply, the scanner in the man's hand beeped sharply. The red light pulsed faster, glowing brighter as it pointed toward the house. The man's eyes narrowed. There, he said, stepping forward. John's heart nearly stopped. From the basement below, the girls huddled together. They had heard the sound, and the older one whispered in her strange accent. They know they will find us. The younger shook her head, tears shining on her cheeks. We can't go back, she whispered. We can't. Upstairs, John acted quickly. He pushed the door half shut and leaned on it, forcing a calm voice. It's just old wiring, he said. My house is full of strange signals. That's why your thing is beeping. The man frowned. Not convinced, he raised his hand, motioning for the other soldiers. One of them stepped closer to the window, pressing his scanner against the glass. The buzzing grew louder, brighter, more insistent. John's fear burned into anger. He stepped outside, closing the door behind him. If you're accusing me of something, say it, he snapped. The men turned their eyes to him, their cold faces unreadable. The tall one studied John for a long moment, then said, You should be careful, stranger. Some things are not what they seem. With that, he lowered the scanner, the red light dimming. The men stepped back slowly, returning to their vehicle, but not all of them. One soldier lingered by the fence, staring at John's house, his eyes hidden behind dark glasses. He stayed there, motionless, like a shadow pinned to the earth. The vehicle engine rumbled to life, headlights cutting through the darkness. 2 of the men got inside, but the last one remained outside. He lit a small device in his hand, placing it on the ground near John's gate. It glowed faintly blue, sinking into the soil, humming softly. A surveillance beacon. John's stomach twisted as he watched them leave. They had not forced their way in, but they had marked his house. The hunters would be watching now. Every movement, every sound, every secret inside. The girls climbed up from the basement, their glowing eyes wide with fear. "They will not stop," the older one whispered. "They will keep hunting until they find us." John clenched his fists. He had wanted a quiet life, simple and unnoticed, but now, his house had become a battlefield. He looked at the two fragile figures in front of him and made a silent promise. He would not let them be taken. Not tonight, not ever, but outside, near the gate. The surveillance beacon blinked like an unblinking eye. Watching, waiting, recording, the hunters had arrived. And they would be back stronger. The night had only begun, the house was quiet again, but the silence was heavy. Outside, the beacon near the gate blinked faint blue, a reminder that the hunters were not gone. Inside, John sat at the edge of his chair, staring at the two strange girls. Their glowing eyes watched him. Nervous and tired, the older girl finally spoke. Her voice soft but firm. "You should not have helped us," she said. "Now you are in danger too." John shook his head. Leaning forward, "You need help," he whispered. "You're just children, I couldn't leave you." The younger one pressed against her sister, her face pale with exhaustion. Her small hands trembled as if even breathing was hard work. John's heart ached at the sight. He wanted answers, but he also wanted to protect them. "Who are you?" he asked, keeping his voice gentle. The older girl lowered her gaze, silence stretching between them. Finally, she pulled up the sleeve of her torn shirt. John gasped. Scars, long and jagged, ran down her thin arm. Not natural scars, but surgical ones. The marks of knives, needles, and machines. The girl's voice shook as she whispered, "They took us not from here, but from the sky." Her words made John's blood run cold. "From the sky," he repeated slowly. She nodded, her glowing eyes shining with both fear and anger. "They caught us when our ship was weak," she explained. "They locked us in cages, in a place full of white walls and bright lights." The younger girl whimpered, covering her ears as if the memory was too painful. John leaned closer, his breath caught in his throat. "You mean humans?" he whispered. The older girl's eyes hardened. "Yes," she said sharply. "Your people." The words hit him like a hammer. Humans had captured them. Humans had experimented on them. John felt shame and rage twist inside him. "How long?" he asked softly. The girl closed her eyes, thinking, "Many days, maybe more. Time is strange there," she said. "We escaped when the guards fought each other. We ran. And we found the night." John's mind raced. A secret lab? Experiments on alien children? No one in his quiet town would believe it. But here they were, proof sitting in his living room. Trembling, broken, yet alive, the younger girl whispered, her voice thin. "They wanted our blood. They wanted to cut, to take, to change." Her sister pulled her close, whispering softly in a language John did not understand. John clenched his fists, fury burning in his chest. He looked at the scars again and felt sick. How could anyone look at these children and see nothing but test subjects? Before he could speak, a faint buzzing filled the room. John froze. The girls looked around, fear flashing in their eyes. It was not from inside. It was coming through the walls. He rushed to the window and pulled the curtain back. Outside, above the street, a small black drone hovered silently, its red light blinking. It scanned the house, sweeping its beam across the windows. John cursed under his breath, dropping the curtain. "They're watching already," he whispered. The girls clung to each other, their glowing eyes wide. "They will find us," the older one said. "They always find us." John shook his head firmly. "No, not this time," he said. "I'll keep you safe." But deep inside, fear gnawed at him. How could one man protect them against trained hunters? Vehicles and drones. The buzzing grew louder, then faded as the drone drifted away. But John knew more would come. The beacon at the gate was a signal. They had marked his house as suspicious. It was only a matter of time before soldiers returned. Stronger and prepared, John turned back to the girls, determination in his eyes. "I need to know everything," he said. "If I'm going to help you, I need the truth." The older girl hesitated, then nodded slowly. She touched her chest with trembling fingers. "Our names are not like yours," she whispered. "But you can call me Lyra, and my sister, Nova." John repeated the names softly. Lyra and Nova. The younger one gave a faint smile, the first hint of warmth since he found them. Lyra continued, "We are not soldiers, not explorers. We are only children of our world." Her voice broke slightly.
They took us because we were easy, small, weak.
John's stomach twisted again. The cruelty of it burned in him. He had seen many bad things in the world, but this was different. This was evil that reached beyond earth. Suddenly, footsteps echoed faintly outside. Crunching on gravel, John's body stiffened, moving to the door quietly. Through the crack of the curtain, he saw two soldiers walking past, scanning the street with glowing devices. They stopped near his neighbor's house, their voices low and sharp. John stepped back quickly, his pulse pounding. Lyra's glowing eyes followed him, filled with dread. "They are closer," she whispered. "We cannot stay." John looked around his small home. The old furniture, the familiar walls. This place had always been safe, ordinary, quiet. But now it had become a cage, a trap, a place already surrounded. He took a deep breath and turned back to the sisters. "You're right," he whispered. "We need a plan." And fast, Lyra gripped his hand suddenly, her touch cold but desperate. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "They will never stop. Not until we are gone or dead." Her words sent a chill through John's bones. He tightened his grip and looked into her glowing eyes. "Then we make sure you survive," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever it takes, outside." The beacon at the gate pulsed again, blue light blinking like a heartbeat. The hunters were closing in. The secrets were no longer hidden. And John knew the next night would be darker, more dangerous, and filled with choices he could never take back. The night stretched long, and John could not sleep. He sat by the window, watching the faint blue blink of the beacon near the gate. It pulsed like a warning, like a heartbeat that did not belong to him. Lyra and Nova were asleep on the couch, curled together, their glowing skin faint under the lamplight. They looked fragile, almost too fragile to survive the danger closing in. John rubbed his tired eyes, his mind racing. The hunters would return, not just with questions, but with force. He had to find a way to move the girls before that happened. But where could they go? The town was small, and the soldiers had already marked his house. Running blindly would only expose them. As he thought, Lyra stirred, her eyes opening, the faint shimmer returning in the dark. She sat up slowly, her voice soft but urgent. "There is one way," she said, "but it is dangerous." John leaned forward, his heart beating faster. "What way?" he asked. Lyra reached into her torn clothing and pulled out a small object. It was no bigger than John's palm, metallic but alive. Glowing faintly with shifting lights, Nova woke as well, clutching her sister's arm as if afraid even of the object itself. Lyra held it carefully, her face serious. "This is a beacon," she whispered. "If we power it, it will call my people. They will come." John's breath caught. Hope, but also danger. "If they come, will they take you home?" he asked. Lyra nodded, though her eyes showed fear. "Yes, but the hunters will detect the signal the moment it lights. They will know. They will come for us before help arrives." John stared at the small beacon, its lights pulsing faintly, a lifeline but also a trap. "What do you need to power it?" he asked. Lyra glanced toward the window where the soldiers had walked the night before. "Energy," she said, "strong energy, the kind your machines carry." Her words chilled him. She meant the soldiers' gear, the glowing scanners, the strange devices. They were the key. John stood and began pacing. Stealing from trained hunters was suicide. But without power, the girls would starve and be caught. With power, they might just survive. He turned back to them, determination burning through the fear. "Then I'll get it," he said. Nova's eyes widened, shaking her head quickly. "They will kill you," she whispered. Her voice trembling, John knelt down beside her, meeting her glowing gaze. "They'll kill all of us if we do nothing," he said. "I'll take the risk." Lyra touched his arm, her thin fingers gripping tightly. "You are human," she said softly. "Why would you help us?" John swallowed hard, looking at the scars on her arms. "Because someone has to," he answered, his voice steady. The night outside grew colder, the streets quiet except for the hum of machines in the distance. John waited until the house across the road went dark, then slipped outside. The beacon near his gate blinked faintly as he stepped past it, its glow brushing against his skin. He crouched low, moving along the fence. Keeping to the shadows, every sound seemed too loud, his heartbeat too heavy. He reached the corner of the street and froze. Two soldiers stood near their black vehicle, their scanners glowing faint red as they swept the road. John pressed himself against the wall. Holding his breath, the men spoke quietly. Words John could not hear. Then one of them placed his scanner on the hood of the car and lit a cigarette. The red glow of the device pulsed steadily. Alive with power, John's eyes locked onto it. That was what Lyra needed. His palms were sweaty, his chest tight. He crept forward slowly, each step careful, silent. The soldier exhaled smoke into the cold night, distracted. John's fingers brushed the edge of the scanner, his breath sharp. But just as he lifted it, the device let out a faint beep. The soldier turned, eyes narrowing. John grabbed the scanner and ran. "Stop!" the man shouted, his voice cutting through the night. The other soldier drew his weapon. Red light flashing as it activated, John sprinted down the street, the heavy footsteps of pursuit echoing behind him. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he did not stop. He clutched the glowing scanner to his chest, the one chance for Lyra and Nova's survival. A beam of red light shot past him, striking the ground and burning the pavement. John stumbled but kept running, turning sharply into a narrow alley. The footsteps grew louder, the shouts closer. He darted around trash bins, leaping over a broken fence. His breath ragged at the end of the alley. He saw his house, the faint light from his window like a beacon. He pushed himself harder, faster. Behind him, the soldiers shouted into radios calling for backup. Engines roared in the distance, vehicles waking up. John slammed into his gate, bursting through, the beacon glowing blue as if alerting to his presence. He threw the door open and stumbled inside. Collapsing onto the floor, Lyra and Nova rushed to him, their eyes wide with fear and relief. He held out the glowing scanner, his chest heaving. "Here," he gasped. "Power your beacon." Lyra's hands shook as she took it. Placing it against the alien device, the small beacon in her possession lit brighter. Humming with strange energy, colors swirled across its surface. Alive and powerful, Nova clutched John's arm, tears shining in her glowing eyes. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with hope and fear together. But outside, the sound of engines grew louder. Closer, the hunters were coming, and this time they knew exactly where to look. The house shook with the sound of engines outside. Headlights cut across the windows, painting the walls in white flashes. John pressed his back against the door. His breath sharp, Lyra held the glowing beacon tight. The small device now alive with strange energy from the stolen scanner. Nova clung to her sister, her glowing eyes wide with fear. "They are here," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "They will not stop until they have us." John looked at the two fragile figures in front of him, then at the small beacon pulsing with alien colors. "Then we use it," he said firmly. "Now," Lyra hesitated, staring at the device. "If I light the signal, they will come," she whispered. "But so will the hunters. They will track it instantly." Her eyes locked on his. Desperate for guidance, John clenched his fists, his jaw tight. "Do it," he said. "Better to call your people than wait here to die." Lyra nodded slowly, then pressed her trembling hands against the beacon. The scanner's red glow bled into the device. Merging with alien light, the room filled with a low hum, vibrating through the floor, through the walls, into their bones. Nova gasped as the beacon lifted slightly into the air. Spinning slowly, glowing brighter, colors swirled across its surface, blue, green, silver, strange patterns that danced like stars. John shielded his eyes as the beacon released a flash of light. A beam shot upward through the roof, piercing the night sky like a spear of fire. The whole house shook, the windows rattling, the walls groaning. Outside, the street lit up as the beam tore through the clouds. Reaching into the heavens, then came the sound, sirens, shouts, boots pounding on gravel. The hunters had seen it. Engines roared as black vehicles screeched to a halt near John's house. Soldiers poured out, weapons glowing, their scanners alive with red pulses. One of them shouted, "The signal! It's here!" John turned to the girls, his voice urgent. "Downstairs now." Lyra grabbed the beacon, still humming, and pulled Nova with her. They rushed into the basement, the beam of light still blasting through the ceiling. John followed, his chest tight, slamming the door behind him. From outside came the heavy crash of boots against wood. The hunters were breaking in. Shadows moved past the basement window, beams of red light sweeping through the cracks. Nova buried her face against Lyra's shoulder, trembling. John gritted his teeth, his hands gripping a metal pipe he had pulled from the basement wall. The beacon pulsed faster, louder, its light painting the dark basement in strange colors. Lyra's eyes glowed bright, reflecting the light as she whispered, "They are close, my people will see us soon, but we must hold until they arrive." John's heart raced. How long? He asked. Lyra shook her head. I don't know. A deafening crash shook the house above them. The front door had been broken open. The hunters were inside, their footsteps heavy, their voices sharp. Search every room, one commanded. Find the subjects. Kill anyone who resists. John tightened his grip on the pipe, sweat dripping down his forehead. This was his house, his home. Now invaded by men who saw children as experiments, he felt fear but also anger. Burning hot, he whispered to the girls, Stay behind me. No matter what happens, the basement door slammed open. A soldier stepped down the stairs, his weapon glowing red. His scanner beeped wildly as it locked onto the beacon. The red light swept across the room, landing on Lyra and Nova. There, he shouted, raising his weapon. John moved without thinking. He swung the metal pipe with all his strength. The weapon clashed against the soldier's arm. Knocking it aside, the red beam fired, scorching the wall. Filling the room with smoke and sparks, the soldier stumbled. And John struck again, driving him back. But more boots thundered on the stairs. More voices shouted. Lyra clutched the beacon, whispering in her own language. Her voice like a chant, the device glowed brighter. Shaking violently as if alive, the humming grew into a roar, rattling every nail, every brick. Every piece of wood. Nova covered her ears, her glowing tears falling like sparks. John fought desperately, swinging the pipe, blocking strikes, pushing back one soldier only for another to step forward. Then suddenly everything went quiet. The air itself seemed to freeze. The beacon released a final surge of light, brighter than the sun, blinding. It shot upward through the house, through the clouds, tearing the sky open. Outside, the hunters stopped in their tracks, their weapons raised but their eyes lifted to the heavens. The beam painted the night sky with silver fire, spreading like ripples across the stars. And then they saw it, a shadow descending, massive, silent, impossible, a ship, dark and vast, blocking the moonlight as it lowered through the clouds. The hunters shouted, some firing wildly into the sky, red beams vanishing against the massive hull. Engines roared as vehicles tried to scatter. But the ship kept descending, steady and unstoppable. The ground shook as its presence filled the air. It was not just a machine. It was a power beyond Earth, in the basement. Lyra and Nova clung to each other, their glowing eyes wide with hope and fear. John stared upward through the cracks in the ceiling, his heart racing. The ship was here, but was it friend or enemy? The hunters regrouped, shouting orders, hold your ground, prepare for engagement, weapons charged. Red lights flashing across the street. Above them, the alien ship's hull shimmered with light, symbols glowing like stars. The night had changed forever. The signal had been answered. The sky burned with silver light. The alien ship hovered above the town, massive and silent, blocking the moon. Its presence pressed against the earth like a storm, heavy and overwhelming. The hunters stood frozen in the street, weapons glowing red, shouting into radios that no longer worked. Every signal was drowned by the power above. In the basement, the beacon went dark. Its energy spent, Lyra collapsed against the wall, breathing hard, her glowing skin dim. Nova held her close, tears of light running down her cheeks. John stood at the stairs, his chest tight, staring upward through the cracks of the broken ceiling. The ship had come just as Lyra promised, but was it salvation or destruction? The ground shook as a beam of silver light descended from the ship. It landed in the street, forming a circle of glowing patterns on the cracked asphalt. The hunters raised their weapons, aiming at the light. Fire! One of them shouted. Red beams shot upward, striking the glow. But the light swallowed them whole, leaving no mark. Then shapes appeared, stepping out of the silver glow, figures tall and strange, their forms wrapped in flowing armor that shimmered like liquid metal. Their eyes glowed like Lyra and Nova's, but brighter, sharper, older. The aliens walked calmly, their steps silent, their presence powerful. The hunters faltered, fear flashing behind their dark glasses. John's breath caught as the basement door swung open by itself. The silver light reached inside. Wrapping gently around Lyra and Nova, the sisters gasped, their bodies lifting slightly as if pulled toward the street. John ran forward, grabbing Lyra's hand. Wait! He shouted. His voice broke through the strange silence, echoing louder than he expected. The armored aliens turned their glowing eyes toward him. One of them spoke, the voice deep, layered, carrying both sound and something inside his mind. You sheltered them, the being said. You risked yourself for them. John's grip on Lyra tightened, his heart pounding. They're children, he said. They needed help, how could I not? The alien tilted its head, its eyes glowing brighter. Humans captured them, tortured them, cut them open. Your kind is cruel, the voice said. Why should we forgive? John's chest tightened with shame and anger. Yes, some humans are cruel, he said, his voice shaking. But not all. I am proof of that. I helped them. I chose to protect. Not to harm. The hunters broke the silence, shouting as they charged, weapons glowing. They fired red beams into the silver circle. The armored aliens raised their hands, a wall of light forming in front of them. The beams vanished harmlessly. One alien flicked its wrist, and the hunters' weapons were torn from their hands, clattering onto the ground. The soldiers stumbled back, powerless now. Lyra's glowing hand trembled in John's grip. Her voice weak but steady. He is good, he helped us. He is not like them, Nova nodded, her glowing tears still falling. He saved us. When no one else would. The aliens looked at each other, their eyes unreadable. Finally, the leader spoke again. One human chose compassion. One human defied cruelty, the voice echoed. Perhaps there is hope. The silver light lifted Lyra and Nova into the air, cradling them gently. They reached out toward John as they floated upward. Thank you, Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. Remember us, Nova cried softly, her glowing eyes never leaving his. John's throat tightened, his eyes burning with emotion. He wanted to follow, to go with them, to see their world. But the light did not lift him. It only surrounded him for a brief moment. Warm and heavy, a message whispered in his mind. One human made a difference we will remember. Then the light carried Lyra and Nova into the ship. The beam faded, the silver circle shrinking until it was gone. The armored figures stepped back into the glow and vanished. The ship rose higher, its massive hull shimmering as it disappeared into the clouds. The night grew dark again, silent, almost ordinary. The hunters stood in the street, their weapons gone, their bodies trembling. One of them turned toward John, his face pale, his voice low. You don't understand what you've started, he whispered. Then he and the others fled into their vehicle, speeding away into the night. The beacon near John's gate had burned out, its light dead. The street was empty. The sky quiet. John stood alone at his door. Staring upward, his house was broken. His world forever changed, but his heart felt stronger than ever. He had saved them. 2 alien children who needed someone, anyone to care, he whispered softly to the night. They will remember, and somewhere beyond the stars, Lyra and Nova carried that memory. The memory of one human who chose kindness over fear. One human who stood against cruelty. One human who proved that even in the darkest night, humanity still had a choice.